Once again, day 5, Spiel. We're here with one of my favorite people in the board game design group, Richard Brees, and his new one, KeyMarket, from R&D Games, obviously. It is for 2 to 4 players, and looks like, what, 90 minutes to 150 minutes. So, hour and a half, 2 hours. And Richard, you were just saying it actually works really well as a 2-player game.
I'm sitting here with Dirk, who's my favourite gaming buddies. Was kind enough to invite me over to BGG Con last year. Had a great time there. This is the follow-up to the BoardGameGeek game, and this is 2 to 4 players, as Dirk just mentioned. I think we do play very well with a 2-player. There's, like most of the R&D games, the action in the game is not in-your-face direct. It's a little bit more subtle than that. It's trying to achieve things before your opponent does, influence a little bit what your opponent does, and try and time your moves so that you're optimizing your position as opposed to your opponent's. So I'm just sorting out the pieces at the moment. We've just taken this out of the box.
Got these lovely pumpkins and what, lettuces and sheep and fish. We're recording, thank you.
We have another gentleman joining us for a 3-player game. No,
and very nice artwork. I assume you have the same artist, your sister?
Juliet, my sister, does the original artwork, and then she sends me the images, and I spend way too long scanning them in and manipulating them to create the final product. Everything is in German and English, and I'm just going to take you through the components for through the English rules, just set the game up and perhaps play the initial moves so I can point people in the right direction. We have, as Dirk mentioned, we've got various wooden pieces. We've got vegetables, fish, fruit, wheat and sheep, which are the resources. And in addition to that, we have the luxuries, which is a purple bubble.
I see, okay.
So at the beginning of the game, we have, depending on the number of players, with just 2 players, there are 3 of each resource in the market at the beginning of the game. So we're going to place 3 of those resources, but we're not going to put any luxuries on the board because they don't enter the game until later on. The luxuries are very useful. They can be used at various stages in the game as 2 different resources. And as you can see from the market board at the moment, there are prices ranging from 6 to 1. The starting price at this stage is 3 for each of the resources. It's the largest number that's visible, that's not covered up by the artifacts. The price for luxury at the beginning is 6. The lowest price it can get to is 1. If we end up putting more resources on the board in the market than there are spaces, then they just accumulate on the number 1 space.
Very cool.
If we're playing for more than 2 players, there is a special little board here, which has got the favour track. This comes from an idea that Corny van Morsel had a few years ago in his Zoo Sim game. It's quite a clever mechanism where the tie breaks are decided and then the place is adjusted on the tie break mechanism. With the 2-player game, which is what we're about to play, the reverse side is used as an additional board. So what we're going to do with a 2-player game is there is 1 board for each player. There's 4 boards, they're double-sided. There's going to be 1 board for each player. We're going to move the others out, and there's an additional 2-player piece here. I'm going to put that on, I'll come back to that in a moment. We've set the market up. There's also the seasons board. Now, the season board indicates the progress that people are making during the game. We play the game over 2 seasons, starting with winter, spring, summer, autumn. We come back to winter, go through, and the game finishes in the second phase of autumn in year 2. The time for the game is roughly half an hour plus half an hour per person. So if we were to play a full game with 2 people, you'd probably be talking about 90 minutes. So we're going to play with the green and the yellow pieces. The Pieces are double-sided so that we can accommodate the colourblind as well. There's quite a strong visual
that's a
element
good
on the
idea.
back.
That's a good idea. Very nice.
And on the other side, we have the usual key workers from similar to the games that we've had, the other games in the Key series. This is the 6th game in the Key series. We've gone through Keywood, Keydom, Keytown, Cathedral, Key Harvest, and now we have KeyMarket.
You almost can't remember all of them now.
I can. This is year 20 at Essen, and I can see my life disappearing in key fashion. One or two games in between, Reef Encounter, Camilla Quinn, of course, BoardGameGeek game last year.
Yes.
So we're going to put the 2 markers on the beginning, and these are going to go through the 4 years, 3 phases in each season. In addition to this, we have the season markers.
We're recording.
The season markers, we have 6 round markers, counters, and we have 6 square markers. Some of these are marked with the number 2 on the back. They go on the bottom layer, and then they're covered up with the number 1 markers, which we then reveal. And these indicate the not very good cutting on the seasons for the circular fields, which are going to give additional production during each of the 3 phases. And we have 6 squares. In the circles, the only fields that are affected are the yellow, orange, and green, which is the wheat, the fruit, and the vegetables, which are also the 3 extra ones which are shown on the 2-player board. On the reverse of the square tiles, we have all 6 symbols covered. 3 of those are going to go face down for the 2nd year, and then they're going to get. We're also going to show them for the 1st year.
Okay.
So, how does the production work? In winter, the basic production is 0, apart from the village, where the basic production is 1. In year 1, so I just found my missing piece. And in year 1, you cannot get to a village which will produce luxury in time to produce any. So this really only affects year 2. The production is shown. Each of these boards are unique, and we're going to have 2 of those in each, 1 of these for each player. Each board has got 9 sections in it. In the centre of each section is a village. At the beginning of the game, when we do the setup, the focus is to decide where you put your initial worker. Like most of the R&D games or the Key games, we have a screen.
You have to have a screen.
So we have a yellow screen for Dirk and a green screen for Richard. And behind the screen, we are going to start off with 1 of each of the resources, but not the luxury. So that's 5 pieces to start with. They go behind your screen. The start player, I'll start just for the demonstration. So I get 3 gold pieces, and Dirk, as the 2nd player, will get 4 gold pieces. If there are more players, the 3rd player also gets 4 gold pieces. The 4th player will get 5 gold pieces. The reason for that, just to explain, is that the first person into the market will have the benefit of securing the prices which are shown here.
The starting price,
The second person is potentially compromised, because if the first person chooses the same spaces, they will receive less. So they're compensated by restarting the game with slightly more. The phases in the game, we have everything in the game is English and German. We have a turn order chart which will enable you to, or will go through, and this will tell you the different phases that we need to go through in each season. Now we're going to need quite a bit of space for this game, and I'm not quite sure which angle I'm going to move things at the moment. Possibly this way. Also in the game there are a number of guilds. There are 12 guilds in each box. In a 2-player game, we are going to use 5 guilds. In a 3-player game, we're going to use 6. In a 4-player game, we're going to use 7. The first game that you play, the recommendation is that we play the guilds which are numbered 1 to 5. So I'm going to take the numbers in the top left-hand side. I'm going to take guilds number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I'm going to put the others aside. Each guild is unique, and I'll come back to those in a moment. And we also have, each player has a farmhouse to start the game. These are dealt out at random, so Dirk will have one farmhouse, and Richard will have another one. Okay, the farmhouse is purchased at the beginning of the game. We are going to have to spend, in my case, 1 sheep and one of the other 4 resources.
Plus a luxury.
At some stage during the game, we're going to upgrade that probably into a manor house. And to upgrade into a manor house, you're going to have to pay one of the, again for me, a sheep, one of the other resources, and the luxury.
Okay.
Now, Dirk has a similar tile, except the one that he has to produce is a wheat rather than a sheep.
Okay.
Now, you have one of each to start the game, so you will be able to upgrade your farmhouse. The focus at this stage is when you pay for your farmhouse at the beginning of the game, the pieces that you pay with go into the market and they affect the market prices.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to put one of my workers into one of the fields. Now I have 10 workers to start with. I have 1 worker on the market board. If we were playing a 3 or 4 player game, we would also have 1 worker on the season board. In the 2-player game, there is not a worker there, so we actually have 9 workers to play with. One of the workers is a special worker that has a K on it. That is the key worker. The key worker is the same as the other workers, except that it is affected by one of the other guilds. And that guild is guild number 4. So I'm just going to put these in order. They don't have to be in order, but it looks quite pretty because they actually all join up if they're in order on the graphics.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
So the key worker has a K on it on both sides. And the key worker special effect only comes into effect during the game if Guild 4 is in the game and if one of the other workers is in Guild 4. The bottom level in Guild 4 says you do not pay the key worker. So the key worker is free, and I will come back to the payment section a little bit later. So the key worker is not, or can be, the worker that you put on initially, and in fact I won't do it on this case. I'm going to put one of the other workers on. So what I do is they put the 2-player board goes on there. I have to place my worker on the board that is given to me. I don't have the option of turning this over. When I place the board, it has to be adjacent on all 3 sides to the start board. So I can either place it this way, or flick it that way, or this way. If we're playing 3 or 4 players and this board is not there, then the same rule applies. The boards have to be adjacent on all 3 sides.
Okay.
Now, there is not a restriction as to how the boards are created, so we could end up in this situation, that situation,
whatever. Yeah, that makes
or a
sense.
square.
Cool.
Depends on what's deemed to be the most beneficial when you lay the boards. So in the start player, this is already down, and I'm going to put the second board down. Now, the other thing I'm looking for at this point is how can I maximise my production? Now, the boards I've got at the moment, I'm looking ahead. I'm not going to get any production in winter. In spring, all of the circles are going to produce, and I'm not quite sure you usually see this, but in the spring, all the circles normally produce 1 resource each turn. There is an exception. Once per year, the yellow, the green, and the orange will produce 3 instead of 1. So I'm looking ahead at spring and I'm seeing that this one will produce 3 resources in spring, which is quite attractive. If you get additional resources at the beginning of the game, that's quite helpful.
Now it's a circle, so it's actually either that one or that one. This one will not produce the bonus ones. Okay, because these boards actually have squares and circles and whatnot.
Yeah, there's all the tiles are either square or circles. The one exception is the luxury. The
Is it always
luxury
a
is
circle?
only circles.
Okay.
The slight anomaly there is that is dealt with on a square tile because all of the 6 tiles and there are 6 different symbols. So we've coloured that in to make that actually look like a circle and not a square.
I understand. That makes sense.
Now, what that's telling us is that in spring, normally all the squares will produce 2. So these 4 squares will produce 2, whereas the circles will produce 1, apart from the
Wheat.
the yellow ones,
The circle
which will
wheat,
produce
yeah.
3.
Okay.
So the squares will produce 2, except for the village, that will produce 0.
Okay.
I'm looking at 2 years, and I'm seeing that the green one will be the next one affected. And as this is only a demonstration, and we're probably not going to go as far as the 2nd year, I feel a bit relaxed about that. So what I'm going to do is to move this round so that I have a square and a circular green space next to each other.
Okay.
Now, there are a number of restrictions as far as placing your workers on the board are concerned. You're not allowed to place, with one exception, which I'll come back to, you're not allowed to place 2 workers of your own colour next to each other. That's sort of orthogonally or diagonally.
Oh, both. Okay.
You're not allowed to have, so that follows that if you have a worker in the village in the middle,
You can't put anywhere else.
you can't put anywhere else.
Yeah,
on
only
the
one of
board.
these 3 places. I see. Okay.
So if I place, the other restriction is you cannot have 2 workers in the same area. Now, an area comprises of more than one space of the same colour.
Oh, okay. So
Doesn't have-
contiguous, light-colored
Exactly
things.
right.
Okay.
So if I have a worker here, there can't be another worker, even though it's not directly adjacent.
Okay.
So what I'm looking at here is I'm thinking the 2 that I can connect, which are different shapes, should give me a bit of flexibility, is here and here. I could get a yellow 3, which is quite attractive, but I can't get that next to a square.
Because I assume if for instance you'd been able to do that, you would actually produce 6 if you were in that field or something.
No, the production is not related to the size of the area. That's a good question, Dirk.
Oh.
It's purely the shape of the space that you are on.
Okay.
So the situation there again, it's only this space that would affect it.
Okay.
Now that has to be level on all 3 sides. I'm going to put
Right.
this green piece, camouflage a little bit onto that space, and that's going to generate later on in the game. That's going to generate in the spring 2 resources for me. Now, because this is still part of the setup, when I place this worker on there, that is going to give me the benefit of.
Well, I don't
This
know
is
why.
gonna give me-
I'm sorry, Richard. This is happening a lot today. I don't
No
know why.
probs, no
It's
probs.
all right.
It's just like being on the stand, so
Yeah,
I'm used to that.
Well, your voice is actually doing very well, considering.
Jolly
Anyway,
good, jolly
yes.
good.
Sorry.
Dirk's working out this morning how long I can talk without a sip of water, and then he's going to take over.
Well, usually I interject a little bit more when I'm here, but honestly, you got a good pace going, so I'll let you keep going. All right.
Okay, good stuff. So this is going to generate one of the vegetables, and I'm going to place that behind my screen. So I now have another 6 items behind my screen. Dirk is now going to take his board at random, which is that way up, and he's going to place that somewhere. Now the 2 players.
Now, can I be here?
That's fine. You have to, as long as all 3 sides are adjacent
I see.
to this initial setup.
All right, so I'll just do that. I don't know your
That's good.
strategy,
Yeah.
so sure.
Now, that's
Now
right,
I-
because this is Dirk's turn. What I'm going to recommend to Dirk actually is, if he rotates, there's a slight advantage having both the 2 symbols in your same area, because then during the game you can move your pieces and still retain ownership of that area.
Oh, okay, so I'll do that.
Dirk's actually not going to do that. He's going to go on to. You have to place this on the board that you have placed.
Oh, I see.
So
okay.
it has to be one of these 9. So
All right.
Dirk is actually in the same position as I am in that he's not Dirk is in a position where he can't put this on a yellow circle, but he would probably put that next to it. Why he would do that? Because in this year, there's no 0 for the
square.
yellow spaces, so
I
he
see.
knows he's going to get a base production of 2 every season for this year, as opposed to the greens and the oranges, where there will be one season where he
Right,
will get
okay.
0.
I gotcha.
And he will also get another yellow, which may be useful because that's his requirement.
Yeah,
for
yellow's good for me.
farmhouse.
I like it.
Right. So, still with the setup, the last thing we're going to do as part of the setup is to seed the market. This is a hand in fist because you can affect other people's production. Now, what I'm thinking is that I have to pay a sheep, so I'm going to put a sheep into my hand. I'm looking and I'm seeing Dirk is producing wheat, so I'd like to start to manipulate the price for the wheat. Dirk also has to play wheat, so the wheat price is going to crash. Let's do that hand in fist, we turn over and then we seed those into the market. So the opening position market prices is orange, let's say orange, fruit for 3, wheat is 1, vegetables 2, sheep 2, fish 3, luxury which we haven't got, luxury 6. So we're ready to start the game. There are 3 phases in each round. The phases are listed on the market board. We start off in the farming phase, we go on to the market day phase, we then go to the end of season phase. The first person, which in this case is myself, goes through all of the actions within the farming phase before the next person takes a turn. Then when each person has done their their farming action, we then together do the market phase. So the first, and it may be if we've got time, we do 2 seasons, because in the first season there's actually not too much happens because it's winter and we don't have very much money. So the first action we've got is to move a worker. It's very expensive to move a worker in the first year. It costs you 1 gold piece per space, and you really should have got your worker where you wanted it to start with. So you're probably not going to do that. Certainly the start player isn't, because I've only got 3 gold pieces. And I'm going to need those.
And I have 4.
The second action is to hire another worker. This is your big choice in the first season. It costs you 1 gold piece per worker that is already in the on the country boards to place a worker. So I've got 1 worker on there. To place a second worker is going to cost me 1 gold piece.
Oh, and then the third one costs you 2.
Exactly right.
And et cetera, et cetera. I see.
So I'm going to place my 1 gold piece there. I've got to put a worker in. No one's producing sheep yet, so no one's producing fish. I quite like the idea of which. I think I probably like the idea of sheep because it shows up better on the camera and you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to put my worker in the sheep. That's cost me 1 gold piece. It's not going to produce anything in winter, but what I'm doing is I'm building up my production for later on in the game. The downside of placing a worker is at the end of each season, which I'll come on to in a moment, you have to pay 2 gold pieces for each of your workers. So there is a cost for doing that. At the moment I've got 2 workers on there, and whilst I think about it just to demonstrate the game, I'm actually going to put my key worker on there, which is the one with the K on there. I'll explain why in a moment. So I've got 2 workers on the board. That's going to cost me 4 gold pieces of the season. Right, the next option that I've got is to receive the resources, but as I say, there's 0 production in the winter. Next we go on to promote. What's going to happen later on in the game when we come to the market day, which I'll explain, is that you may already have workers, or you'll be able to put a worker into one of these guilds. There's 3 levels in each of the guild. We start off at apprentice level. We get the option of promoting up to a craftsman, and then there's 1 space on each of the guilds for
the guildmaster.
The guildmaster. Spot on. We haven't got anyone in the guilds at the moment, so there's no one to promote. Later on in the game, there's 2 additional options. One is to, once during the game, to upgrade your
farmhouse to a manor.
Into a manor house. The manor house enables you to do 2 things. Normally, when you go to market, you can play, and we'll come onto the market phase in a moment, you can take either 1 or 2 goods of the same. Sorry, let's rephrase that. You can take as many goods as you like to market, but you can only sell in batches of 1 or 2 of the same type. Once you've upgraded your farmhouse into a manor house, you can actually take 3 goods of the same type to market at the same time and secure the same price.
Yeah, so okay, that makes sense.
So if you sell 1 good to market, for example here, you would get 3 for it. If you take 2 goods to market, you only put 1 of them in the market, the second good gets placed in the store, and you get 3 for each of them. Now, if you've upgraded your farmhouse into a manor house, you're then allowed to take 3 to market at the same time.
And 9 instead of the 6.
Exactly right.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Okay, very cool.
So that's the effect of the manor house. The other effect of the manor house is later on in the game, you've got the ability to retire workers. Workers can be retired either from the fields or from your unplayed stock. As I say, we have 10 workers in the 2-player game, 9 of those are active during the game. So I place those there. The workers remain visible. I've got 7 there, 1 there, 1 there, and 1 on the board. The workers remain visible. It's the money and the resources that stay behind your screen. So we don't receive any resources now because it's in the winter. We've gone on to upgrading, so that was upgrading the manor house. The last option which I mentioned is to retire a worker. Generally you will not be retiring workers until the 2nd year, and I'll come on to the game end scoring a little bit later. So farming actions, I've done my farming action, and I'll now hand over to Dirk to work through his farming actions, which will probably be just the same. It's probably, am I going to recruit a worker or not? One advantage if you do not recruit a worker is and it is a valid tactic, is you're reducing your expenditure by 2 gold pieces, and secondly, when we come to change the worker order at the end of the season, the deciding factor is the initial factor is the player who has the fewest workers in the fields will go first. And there can be a big advantage in going first because you get the first option of where to place your next workers. You're also first in the market to secure the prices before the other players get there. So we've now reached market day. Market day, we have basically two actions. One is we have to take at least 1 good, if you have any, into the market. Occasionally you could find yourself with no goods, in which case you have to lift your screen and declare it, and also that will reveal how much cash you've got, so you probably don't want to do that. The second thing that you can do is you will do a guild action. I'll come on to guild actions in a moment. What are the considerations at this point? This is not really in the rules, but this is just a little bit of tactics for the benefit of BGG viewers who have persevered the first 10 minutes of this presentation.
Actually, it's 20, but
20?
You gotta keep rolling, brother.
Derek's going to count me down in a minute. I've only got 30 minutes. Okay. The situation here is I need, unless I place a worker in this guild, which is do not play key workers, which I may well do because I played my key worker here, I will need 4 gold pieces at the end of the season. At the moment I've got 2. I will also probably want to place one of my workers into one of the guilds. That's going to cost me 2 different resources. The cost for putting into a guild is 2 resources. There is a guild, as you would expect, that reduces the cost, but the basic cost is 2. Always you have to pay different resources. A luxury,
so 3 different things.
3 different resources.
Or 2 different things, yeah, I see.
2 to put the first worker in. Later on in the game, the luxury can be used to, instead of any 2 other resources, you cannot use 2 luxury together because they're the same. It costs 3 different resources to promote to a craftsman, 4 different resources, or 2 in a luxury, to promote up to the guild master. So I need to get at least 2 more gold pieces to keep my workers. I need to keep 2 different resources, so one of the ones I'm going to take to market must be a green. I'm looking at the prices. The other price for the other 2 is quite good, they're 3 each, so I'll take my fish to market. I'm going to keep these 2 behind my screen. The other thing I need to bear in mind is when we come round to the spring, the farming section in spring, it's going to cost me 2 gold pieces to place my next worker. So I'm going to need actually to generate at least 6 gold pieces and to have at least 2 resources behind my screen. Together at the moment, these 2 are probably going to, at the moment they're going to generate 5. Dirk is only going to be able to influence one of those prices, so I'm going to be able to generate 4. 4 and 2 is 6, I'm just got enough to do it. Money is quite tight in this game.
I was going to say, it seems like it, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to sell into the market, and I'm going to put these 2 resources behind my screen, Dirk is going to do the same thing. He's going to put 2 of his resources.
I'm going to put my coffee behind my screen.
All his are different, so he's probably just going to focus on where's he get his best price. He's probably going to put
fish
and the fruits
orange.
and the fish there,
Yep.
because they're going to give him the best price. He doesn't show me; it's hand in fist. We do that together. Turn it over.
Yeah, I forgot mine. Sorry.
Okay. We place what we're taking to market onto your farmhouse so people can easily see what it is that you've taken to market. Okay, now my next consideration is I've got one action, then Dirk's got an action, I've got an action, Dirk's got an action, until we've done as much as we need to do. Right, so I'm looking at this, I've got a fish, I've got a vegetable, Dirk's got a fish, so if I'm going to get 3 for my fish, I've got to play this first. Why wouldn't I do that? The reason I might not do it, although it's not as critical in a 2-player game, is that there might only be 1 space left in a guild in a 3 or 4-player game. So I might want to make sure that I get into one of these guilds whilst there's still space. But at the moment in a 2-player game, there's not that same restriction. So I'm going to place my fish into the market and beat Dirk to the fish. And I'm going to take my 3 gold pieces for my fish and put those behind my screen.
And then I will...
the other thing that I forgot to do, apologies, when we finish doing the farming section, which we did a little moment ago, we move our worker across to show that we're now in market day. Okay, Dirk is either going to sell or he's going to do one of his guild actions, but as I haven't explained the guild action yet, he'll probably just going to place into the market, which is no disadvantage at this stage, because as I say, there's room to place into the guilds for both of us. I'm now going to sell my second, which is my vegetables, for 2 gold pieces. Place that behind my screen. So I've actually got 7 gold pieces, which is going to be enough to achieve.
I'm rich.
And Dirk is rich, but not for long.
Actually,
okay.
You know why I'm rich? Because I didn't pay for that.
All right, okie doke. Gotta watch this guy.
Yeah, I cheat.
Right, the other action they can do, and you don't necessarily have to sell first. Normally it's a balance. It depends on what stage of the game, how critical it is. What the game is a little bit of a race. There's only 1 space at the top of each of these guilds. It can be a little bit of a race to get there. I'll explain the guilds in a moment. In fact, I'll do that now because it ties in with what we're doing as far as the guild actions are concerned. Each guild, as I mentioned, has got 3 levels. Apprentice, Craftsman and Guildmaster. Cost 2, 3 and 4 different resources to bring a worker into that particular level. I use this in an example. All 12 guilds are different. It'll make a big difference to the game and to your tactics as to which guilds are in the game. So just to explain this one, which is one of the more complicated guilds, this particular guild has got additional characters in there, which are the sheep and the fish. If I place a worker on there, this actually only affects the the sheep, but you can move as you promote into the other section. What this is telling me is if I place on there, my sheep, which is in here at the moment, will produce 1 extra resource in the production phase. So when we come to production in the spring, this key worker in this space will produce 3 resources rather than just the 2. So that's quite attractive. When I move, if I promote later on to the 2nd level, which will cost me the 3 different resources, the benefit becomes each of the circles for the sheep produces an extra 1. So if I have 2 workers in there, I'll be getting 2 extra resources. I will point out at this stage again that the circles for the fish and the sheep do not have a 3 season. The 3 seasons repeat themselves for these 3 during the 2nd, and this is a counterbalance to that. The 3rd level is the end of the game. The value of the resources is +2. In the end game scoring, if you have a pair of identical resources, you get 5 victory points. This will give you an extra 7 victory points, which is very handy. The other thing to explain about the guilds, some of these symbols, some of the guilds have got the levels have got a little snowflake next to them. That means there is the potential to earn income or earn resources during the winter season in year 2.
Yeah.
Winter is quite a desperate time in this game, and it's quite useful to be getting resources during that phase. There's one or two, not many guilds. I'm going to get another one here.
Yeah.
Now the other contrast here, this is Guild 4. You'll notice this guild has got 3 different scrolls in it which are not joined up. That means that when you promote to the next level, you do not retain the ability from the bottom level. But generally, or in all cases, the second level ability is better than the first level. The difference between some of the other guilds is that the scroll is continuous. That means that the ability is retained from the previous level. Also, there is a little plus sign on the upper levels. That's a second indication that the ability is cumulative. And there is one of the guilds which is not out at the moment, where there is a scroll that's joined at the first 2 levels but not at the top level. So that means you keep the ability to the second level, but you don't bring it up to the 3rd level. So back to market day. Initially we have the sell option, and interchange with that we have 6 different guild actions. I'm just going to double check with Dirk how long we've got to carry on explaining the game, so that I know how short to make the rest of the explanation. Okay, what we have here are the 6 guild actions. The first action, which we've explained, is to sponsor an apprentice. Just an example in this game, because I have my key worker out, I'm actually going to put the worker into Guild 4, which means I do not pay my key worker at the end of the season. I have to pay 2 different resources to place as an apprentice in there. I pay that into the stock. So that's my 1 guild action. When I've done my guild action, I move on the other floor that we did on the setup, apologies, I'm going first, I should be at the top, not Dirk. When I've done my guild action, I move over to the end of season phase. That would not prevent me continuing to sell things into market. This is just an indicator of when the guild action has been taken. The second option is to promote to the craftsman, which costs you 3 resources. Next option, promote to guild master, which you can only do from craftsman, 4 different resources. The next option is you can retire a worker, 4 different resources. The next option, which is quite interesting, is that you can buy from the market.
Yeah.
Now, particularly, this is more likely to come in during the second season, the second year, and also some of the guilds which are not in the initial setup will also affect the market manipulation. This is, after all, the key market. What you can do is you can, if you have sufficient money, you can buy from the market. You can buy at the price which is shown, the largest visible number.
Yeah, so in this case it's 1, not 2.
That's right.
Okay.
So if I had not used my guild action here, one of the other actions would have been to buy either 1 or 2 of these products. If I bought 2, I'd take them both from the market. So that would cost me 2, and I've increased the market price. Now that can be especially interesting if, for example, I'd actually taken some wheat to market. I can, as my guild action, buy 2 of those for 2. They go behind my screen. I can't sell them straight away, but if I'd taken these to market, then I would be able to sell both of those together, 6 gold pieces.
Nice flip. Yeah.
Just 1 guild action. But that can be you can actually build up quite a nice production. So if you increase the market price, especially if later on you've got your manor house, and you're selling 3 at a time, you can get quite a boost from that, because you get 3 at, say, at 4,
totally,
and so on.
Yeah.
So that's buy from the market. The last option, if things are desperate, is that you can take cash. You take cash, 5 gold pieces, minus 1 gold piece for each of the workers you have in the fields. So in this case, I could take 3 gold pieces, and also in the 3 or 4 player game, when you take that option, you also move to the top of the favour track. The favour track affects the position that you're going to be in if workers are equal in the turn order in the following season.
Tiebreaker for turn order.
Gotcha. Right. So when Dirk has taken his guild action, he's probably going to place one of his workers in this guild. So he's going to pay his 2 different resources. You've got 2 resources left. Put there, he takes one of his workers from over here, and he places these into one of the resources. Let's put it into Guild 2. This means that next season one of his squares is going to produce extra, so that will produce
I'll have wheat coming out of my bum.
That's a good one for him. Okay, he's done his guild action. We've finished. We've all done sold everything that we've taken. You have to sell everything. We've taken our guild action. We go into the end of season. First thing we do is adjust market prices. We look down here. There's each of these are in the -1. If there is the highest pieces here, then there's nothing taken off. Here we take -1, -1, -1, -1, -1, -1. Slight boost to the market prices. The second thing is we remove the season marker. We don't do this yet. We only do this in the spring, summer, and autumn.
But you would normally pull these off.
But what you do is you take the top one off, and then we reveal the
new
counters for year 2.
Okay.
So we don't do that until we get to spring. We then pay or remove your workers. If you choose not to pay your workers, then you take them off the board, but they're costing, Dirk's a bit of a cheapskate here, it's 2 gold pieces for each worker. He is paying 4 gold pieces because he has 2 workers.
As all of our employees would.
Only 2 went there, so I'm going to take the other 2 from him as well.
What?
It's 2 for each of your workers. You've got.
Actually, oh, I do have 2.
No, you only have 1 there. So you did what you didn't do is you didn't put another.
You skipped my turn back then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's 2. I'll give you 2 back. Good spot. Okay. And then we have the new player order. So because Dirk only has 1 worker on the board, he automatically goes first. Even if he had 2, because it's a 2-player game, we reverse the turn order if it was equal. So Dirk will go first in the spring. Now I'm just going to ask Dirk how long we've got. Shall I simply do the end of game scoring?
Do the end of game, yep. That's good enough.
Okay. We play that through for the 8 seasons. The end of the game, scoring is as follows. And I'm going to disrupt the setup because at the end of the game, we reverse the boards.
Okay.
And we have 2 scoring boards. We put a worker each on the scoring track, and we score 15 points if we've converted into a manor house. Move to there. Normally both players have, but it's not impossible to win the game without doing that. It depends on your tactics. Because even though you need a luxury in order to do that, and you probably be able to buy a luxury from the market, even if you're not producing it here. We get 15 points for each of the retired workers, so it's 15 for the main house, 15 for each retired worker. We get value of the workers in the guild, so 5 points for each apprentice, 10 for each craftsman, 15 for each guildmaster. Gold pieces are worth 1 for each victory point.
Retired workers are 15 apiece. Also.
Yeah. So we normally at this stage, you'll see the score track is you will build up a minimum score of 50 points through a combination of guild workers, retired workers, and manor house. The score track goes from 5s to 1s. So we've probably. At the end of the game we would have scored some points here. Let's just say for argument's sake we got 50. You get 1 point for each of your gold pieces. So there, that would have been another 7. And you get 5 points for each of your pairs. So that would have been another 5 points, 62.
So pairs of commodities?
Have to be pairs, yeah. If you've not got a pair, you will have taken the singles to market in the final season. There are various bonuses. The bonuses are in gold parchment, gold-coloured parchment, so you can easily recognize. This one, for example, 2 extra gold pieces for each pair of livestock.
This one says 5 different resources, 25 gold pieces at the end of the game. So that's 25 points.
And there are others, for example, luxury, 5 points, additional gold pieces for each pair, so a pair of luxury is 10. This one, for example, is a bonus for each of the workers you have in the guilds. Let's say each combination of the guilds will make each game different. And then simply it's the one with the most points is the winner.
The most points wins.
If there's a tie, it's
the manor house or the
It's normally the person, if it's the 3 or 4 player game, that's highest up on the favour track. But the other tie breaks is gold pieces and resources. And that in a nutshell is KeyMarket. I hope you enjoy the game.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time this morning, Dirk.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.